Are you ready to find out how we build systems while everything runs remotely at 2XU? So in the last video, I shared with you guys that 2XU is about to hit 6 years this October. It's actually turning 6 years next week. And one of the questions I always get asked is, how are we doing all of this remotely? How are we running this whole virtual assistant business while everyone works from home, while I'm here in Bangkok, Thailand, or anywhere else in the world? How do we do it? And I'll break it down for you guys what that actually looks like behind the scenes. So basically, when 2XU started, it was October of 2019, and it was right before the pandemic. And at that time, we did kind of have a mini office. It was literally just me and our first hire, basically, of an executive assistant, and my co-founder as well, meeting at a co-working space. And at that time, that was kind of our norm. We would meet 3 times a week. We would meet Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And basically, that was kind of our setup. We kind of already had a remote setup to begin with. And then when the pandemic happened, it was kind of really easy to just switch. Like, everyone now works from home, everyone now works online. And that was kind of the way that we were able to keep growing the business as well. It's like everyone was basically just at home, everyone was just kind of doing their thing. And we had to build out ways basically that we would know if the people in 2XU were working, were getting done, what was getting done, what needed to get done, and so on and so forth. So the first thing that we did was we mapped out our processes within the business. So what this looks like is we mapped out the client journey. We have it where we know when a client first comes in. So it's either they go through kind of a lead form that we have. So we have a 2XU scorecard where people can find out if they're ready for a virtual assistant or not. We have a list of like 200 plus tasks that people can look at essentially when they're trying to figure out if they, what they can delegate to an assistant. So we have these different ways that we can capture their information, and then hopefully we can get them to book a call, and then so on and so forth. So we basically mapped out what it looked like for a client to get in touch essentially with 2XU and what that journey looked like. And we also had to map out the journey of essentially what an executive assistant would expect working in 2XU. So essentially what it would be like for an applicant to find 2XU, what would be the hiring process, the recruitment process essentially, what interviews they would go through, how their pay is structured. So we mapped up both sides of like what would a client experience in 2XU and what would an executive assistant experience when going through 2XU. And then of course we have to map out what needed to get done in the daily, the monthly, the weekly, the quarterly. Basically, what did our whole company look like operations-wise as well? That way, when we were onboarding people, when we were walking them through how 2XU works, there was already a visual map. We're still using Miro when it comes to mapping out how the business looks like and how the business works. And it just makes it easier for us to make changes later on, to update things, because we do have a kind of very laid out way of how we would do business at 2XU. And in the last 3 years, we've actually started doing this with our clients, where we map out their business, map out how processes work, map out how they're getting clients, how they're getting employees, so then it's out of their heads. And that was a very important thing for me, is basically around 2023, when I started traveling again, because the world started opening up, I would go on a trip and things needed to be out of my head. And very vividly, when my mom sadly passed away in 2021, I had to be out of the business because I was taking care of my family, grieving myself. So I had to make sure things were running. So things being written down in 2XU helped a lot in kind of freeing me up as the business owner, where I didn't have to really be there in the business for the business to keep going. Next is we've created a very easy template on how we write up our standard operating procedures. So what that means is within 2XU, as we've mapped out the different processes, of course we had to also write down the how. How do we do the calls for the clients? How do we onboard the clients? How do we onboard the executive assistants? So we've created our standard operating procedure template. So then for each person in the company, when they're creating a process, when they're documenting something, it's super easy and straightforward for them to be able to write down that process and train the next person. And now this template has evolved and changed so much in the last 6 years, but it's still there. It still makes it easy for someone else to look at the document to understand step by step what needs to get done, and also be able to create the same result that the other person was creating. So essentially our SOPs are kind of like a recipe book, where if you want the recipe on how to make the perfect carbonara, which is basically how to onboard a client, you can basically follow step by step the process that's written down in the SOP, and then makes it easy for the next person to take over, to understand it, to take care of it, essentially. Next is, on top of that, we've created a database of our assets. So these are things like your email templates, these are things like the contract for the business, basically. These are things like our slides, essentially, for when we're presenting to clients, so on and so forth. We have an easy way to grab and get all of the assets within the business, so we don't have to wait for someone to share it. We don't have to wait for someone to, give it to us. We're able to collaborate, even on different time zones, even in different countries, and be able to get things done and keep things going. Even if someone in our team, like a major person in our team, goes on leave, takes a break, things can keep running because we just have our SOPs in one place, our database in another place, and it's easy for the both to meld and be able to, for other people basically, to find what asset and what template and what SOP and what part of the process they're at. There is a clear and easy way for us to identify, like, oh, this is where all of the sites are. These are where all of the Google Docs are. This is where all of the sheets with all of our databases are. So it makes it process easier, where we don't have to keep bugging other people within the team, because it's easy for everyone else to find whatever it is that they're looking for. Next is we co-create a lot of our processes. And what that means is it's not just the one person creating our SOPs. We have someone who's basically our systems manager inside of 2XU, where all of her focus is really making sure that when SOPs are getting made, that they're documented correctly, they're added to the map, they're added to the process, and she's making sure essentially that any other changes in the future is also updated. And this is the same person who works with our clients when it comes to their systems and their processes and how they get things done. And she basically is very meticulous and really just watches every single step to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and things are updated when they should be. So again, it's not just the one person creating the recipe book, it's that person plus our systems manager making sure it's actually easily readable. We call it a freedom test and we make a joke of, like, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, things will keep running because you wrote down the system exactly how you would do it, so that it's easy for someone else to replicate and just kind of basically keep continuing. Next part is we actually use a lot of our systems, and what that means is as we write them down, we test it out, and then we actually start using them. This way, there's less friction or going back and forth of, like, oh, how did this get done again? Or is this correct? Like, are we doing this right? The process is there, and we actually constantly use it for our day-to-day, what it is that we're doing in 2XU. And if there's something that's missing, we go back to the process of creating that SOP, of making sure that it's up to date, making sure that it's part of the map, of making sure it's part of the process. And with this way, it allows us, again, for that freedom of flexibility in our work time. So for me, I'm an hour behind from the Philippines right now here in Thailand, which means for my team, they're on a different time zone. I will have team members I had our operations head travel to Europe last year, and she was still able to keep things running. And that's kind of the part of, like, the vision that I had for 2XU, really, was I wanted it to be where it's not just me that I have the location freedom. Everyone else inside 2XU also had their location freedom to travel, to do other things, to work anywhere, and not just for me. So having it where we actually use a lot of our SOPs, where we use our processes, and it's not just sitting there and not really being read by anyone. We make sure that things can keep running even when our team members are traveling, and even when our EAs are traveling, their client essentially has a copy of their processes, so they can, again, keep things rolling even when that person, the key person who's supposed to get it done, isn't there. And finally, we always keep them up to date. And I've said this multiple times within this video, where one of the ways that we make sure that things are getting used is when we use them, if there's something that's missing, if there's something that's not right, we make sure that the SOP is actually up to date. And we also have it where we check it every 6 months if it's still accurate, if it's still, if we see basically on our database that the last edited was like 6 months ago, we bump the person who's in charge of the SOP of, like, hey, is this still correct? Is this still accurate? And this is what we train our executive assistants as well when it comes to maintaining their client systems, processes, SOPs, assets, templates, all of that good stuff, is making sure that it is used and is being used and is actually accurate to what they're currently using for the day-to-day processes and how how that looks like for them. So that's essentially a little bit behind the scenes of how our different systems work in 2XU, how we keep working remotely as a team, and how we've kind of not really needed an office. The only times that we kind of really just needed an office was doing quarterly meetings, which we love doing that in person just because we get to see everyone, sometimes for the very first time if they just got hired that quarter. But it makes it where it's easier for us to collaborate, to work together remotely because we have all of these systems and processes in place. It makes our lives just a little bit easier. And this is, again, something that we do for our clients at 2XU. So if you guys are interested, make sure to book a call below. And if you're not really ready yet for an executive assistant, we can do a very quick systems audit to see where your business is at. If you guys do need a lot of those SOPs, or you're just kind of very much new in the space, feel free to book that quick call below as well. And of course, if you like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there. Comment below any questions you guys might have when it comes to running a remote business. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Thursday on how to grow a business online, especially with AI. And if you want to learn more about being an executive assistant, check out my first channel here. And of course, check out the latest video right here. I hope you guys have an amazing and fantastic day. And remember that small steps matters. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.